we had a discussion about this evolution of a marketing leader in a franchise system. And this is true outside of franchising as well. But I think there's some complexities inside franchising that really add some level of difficulty that might not exist in a non-franchise world. And if you'll allow me to simplify and perhaps dramatize just a little bit, it was 15, 20 years ago where if you were leading marketing in a franchise, you had this thing called the National Ad Fund. Everybody knew you had to spend it. They said, go sit in your silo and spend it and come back and try to convince us it worked, because we all know you're going to come back and say, well, you can't document what the ROI is from advertising. So go spend the money in your silo and come back to us once or twice a year and tell us what you did and try to convince us, and we're going to go run the business over here. Then you had this thing come along called technology. And you might remember that it was maybe 10 years ago that there was a study out that talked about how by 2025, the CMO's technology budget was going to be larger than the CIO's technology budget in the typical company. So all of a sudden, marketing was no longer advertising. It was advertising with a heavy emphasis on technology. And as marketers, we were forced to begin making technology solutions, signing up for software as a service, figuring out what our stack needed to be able to monetize the customer journey. And all of those different things became part of who we were, and we got a little more attention because of all the work we had to do with technology and partnering with our technology partners and signing large agreements that weren't necessarily advertising driven. When that happened, of course, what that meant was that the CFO wanted to talk to us a little bit more about what is the business case for the investment that you're making. Where are we going to get a return on the investment? How are we going to monetize this? Is this CapEx or is this OpEx? And what is the ongoing carrying cost going to be? And those are conversations that honestly, a lot of CMOs had never had before. And then as we start to get into building brands, we've seen this evolution over the last 15 to 20 years that as a marketer, we no longer really build our brand. It's the experience we deliver that builds our brand. It used to be that we could run a couple $1 million in advertising and really define what our brand was and what our brand meant. And to a certain extent, we can still do that. But if we're not delivering an experience that reflects that, our brand will never become what we want it to become. So now all of a sudden, the marketing leaders are delving into the operations role, who typically used to own customer journey, customer satisfaction, but now because it's such a key component in branding, what role does the marketing leader play in driving the customer journey and customer satisfaction? And then last but not least, we all know that a lot of marketing now has become local. And so we're asking our franchise owners to say, how do you do more boots on the ground, local marketing? And ultimately what that comes down to is training. So how do we train our franchise owners to become local marketers or to build their teams to become local marketers? And we're now integrating with our L&D or our learning and development or our training department as well. So those are the 4 things that we really wanted to lean into. And as you heard Danielle said, we have some really good people to give us their opinion. Abby Lee from Remax, absolutely brilliant. Obviously leads marketing for a major nationally known brand with lots of different types of franchises. And then we also have Kasey Skala, who's from a little bit smaller concept, who can look at it from a little bit of a smaller perspective and how do they view this. But at the end of the day, what we're focused on is very quickly diving into those 4 areas. Number 1, what do we do when it comes to customer journey defining the brand? Marketing and technology, how do those fit together? What about L&D to get our franchise owners to prepare their teams and themselves to do the local marketing necessary for us to be successful? And from a finance perspective, how do we begin to better integrate with our finance partners at the franchisor side to make sure that we're making not only the proper investments, but that we're getting the capital we need to be able to effectively grow revenue for our franchise owners. So that's really what our agenda is. I've done enough talking. I'm going to kick it off. And Abby, we're going to come right to you. Let's talk about customer experience. In most organizations, customer experience resides or has resided in the operational area of responsibility. What role does the CMO play in that in today's world? And what role should the CMO play in that 5-10 years down the road?
Very, very interesting question, because this is actually something that is happening in my organization now, where as we talk about customer experience, especially in franchise world, right? We can suggest customer experience to our franchisees, but we're not the ones that are actually delivering it, right? And that makes it a very complex situation, because we can't really carry through that brand promise if we're not really the ones delivering it at the end. So I do think it goes into this world of CMOs, marketing folks, working with technology folks, working with operation. It's more of a holistic team effort, I believe, more so than anything. What I found at Remax, what we're doing more and more to deliver that customer experience is combining marketing and technology, getting our MarTech stack, mostly of training tools, right? So mostly of things that either we can help with education that we're helping develop with our learning department, or it might be tools that we can put in the hands of the franchisees to make their marketing easier, to get that experience across to the customer and provide the content that's going to be so important to deliver. So I think that the CMO role has definitely, creeped into customer experience, creeped into operations. I don't know about all of you, but sometimes I feel like marketing's running the entire company, because we touch absolutely everything that goes on. And I think that's just going to continue to evolve. Whether 10 years down the road, I don't know if our titles will be CMOs anymore. I don't know what it will be. I don't have that crystal ball, but I definitely think that it's going to be an enhanced role, and maybe even getting to more of a CEO kind of level, not quite there, but bringing that much to the table.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I like that. I mean, you've already kind of started to see some of those title changes. Chief Growth Officer was something that kind of came on the scene about 10 years ago. I think more recently, Chief Strategy Officer. And if you look at who are filling those roles, probably a disproportionate number of them are people who came from a marketing or a rev gen background. And so absolutely, I think you see these changes in titles. You're 100% right. Kasey, you've had a ton of success in this area. And I'd love for you to add anything that you would like to add to what Abby said, but then also specifically dig into one or two, maybe even three of the things that you feel have been most impactful in creating the level of success that you've experienced with regard to influencing customer experience in a positive way to build the brand.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I agree with Abby's statement on this. I look back at my time at Great Clips when we brought technology into the forefront of our business, and traditionally it's been a customer stops into your unit, has a transaction, goes home, and that's that experience. And today, obviously, with digital leading the way of discovery, decision making, follow-up experience, really that whole bucket really lives in the marketing realm, right? So it's no longer just the experience that they may have inside of a unit that you own. So marketing is really the only area that's equipped, or hopefully is equipped, to handle that experience 24/7, 365, whether it's inside your owned domains or if it's outside domains that you are leveraging. So having someone, having that relationship with technology, having that relationship with your data intelligence team, I think is vital to today's businesses succeeding. Here at Citywide, we have a little different business model. We're a B2B business in the facility maintenance area. So our experience, we've actually broken customer experience out of operations. It was historically with operations. We've broken it out into its own area, service delivery and innovation, that between that role, our chief technology officer, and then myself, we kind of have that triangular collaboration approach of delivering innovation, delivering service delivery to our customers. And whether it's building, whether it's executing, whether it's communicating with our franchisee and training them, all of that communication and strategy lives within marketing. And we've also brought learning and development under marketing. We've brought our business development under marketing. So, really the traditional operations tasks are no longer operations, and they're focused on, franchisee profitability and franchisee success. And, the customer experience now solely lives within marketing with a hand in technology and delivery.
Yeah, I love it, Kasey, and I'm going to follow up and ask you to dig into that a little more, and then Abby, I'm going to come to you for your perspective on this as well. But Kasey, you got a lot of people that are watching right now going, wait a minute, did you just say learning and development is under marketing? Did you just say biz dev is under marketing? Did you just say nobody really owns customer experience? It's 3 different people that work together on it. Your organization obviously is, what I would say, based on my experience, a little bit ahead of the curve in making this transition. Give us some insights into what those discussions were like when you were deciding to make this transition, and did they happen organically, or was there something that you or someone else on the team did to start those discussions? And if so, give us some insights on how we can start those discussions in our organizations.
Yeah, so really the discussion happened internally with technology and with marketing of, if we evaluate our business, and again, it might be unique to us because of our business model where we don't actually provide the service. That is outside of our hands. We work with independent contractors. So it was almost an opportunity for us to get ahead of the curve and, taking an experience that we don't technically control and finding ways where we can bring that experience and enhance that experience in ways that ultimately our client is going to understand. Because again, at the end of the day, right, we're in front of our client. It doesn't matter who's sweeping the floors and cleaning the toilets, right? They think it's our brand, regardless of whether it's us doing it or a third-party contractor. So for us, the conversation was, if you look at technology and the way innovation is going, we can't excel. You can only sweep a floor so many ways, right? You can only clean a toilet so many ways. You can bring in products and things like that, but the innovation within commercial cleaning and janitorial is fairly non-existent. So how do we set ourselves up for success to deliver that experience with our client, with their employees, with our independent contractors? How do we bring technology into the picture to make that experience more seamless so our franchisees aren't losing business? So it started internally, and we forced our franchisees to, it was, get on board or be left behind. This is the way we're going. We need to adapt and bring on technology. And then internally, it wasn't that difficult of a conversation, because I think that bringing in technology and having that relationship with our technology team before we started this transition, and understanding and building that relationship with him and his team around how we're going to be a data-driven organization and how we're going to bring in this new way that of operation, having that buy-in at the top, again, made that communication with the franchisees, made the communication with our vendors that much easier. And it also made that conversation with our CFO of, from an investment standpoint, it's going to be a lot easier for me to go to him and say, hey, traditionally, like you mentioned, Mark, traditionally, the dollars were over here. Well, now we're bringing over the dollars to marketing and technology. And here's how we're going to have that conversation around being fiscally responsible and how it's actually driving value to the brand beyond just, I spent $1 and I got $2 back from the sale. So having that conversation up front, and building those relationships, but then also just diving in and going and bringing along the adopters, the innovators early on in the process was key for us.
Awesome. Abby, I'd love for you to add anything that you want to add to that, but I also want to go one step further because what Kasey said kind of triggered something in my mind, and I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. But everybody I'm imagining here today looks at their organization and can identify 1, 2, 10, 15 areas where they feel like something out of their control is ultimately diluting the impact they're able to have on the organization. When you have that 1, 2, 10, 20 areas, talk us through advice on what conversation, how do you have that conversation with someone in the organization, whether they're the person directly responsible for the area that might be diluting your effectiveness, or someone who oversees that area or can have influence on that area.
Interesting. I was just thinking back to probably 2 years ago, I had a conversation regarding our intranet, which is a technology product, but obviously is the first thing that our franchisees, our broker owners, and then our agents go to get our value, right? That's where our value prop lives. And we're going through a process of talking about redesigning it with product. And my VP of marketing, James Schwartz, and I had all these ideas in our head and had drawn out, things like, here's what we're envisioning. And I got a call from our senior VP of product at the time who said, marketing is not going to tell product what to do. And that was like this moment, right? Because I was getting directed by the CEO and president of our brand, of the Remax brand, that he wanted XYZ. Product was over here saying marketing's not going to tell me what to do. I didn't really have to solve the issue because we did have a restructuring, and so we now have a new VP of product who is lockstep with us. Like nothing that he wants to do to create product or anything is without our, input, advice, going hand in hand with him along the process, which has been fantastic as of late. I think if you don't have that kind of relationship or can't build those within the organization, you got to figure out a way to do that, because you're never going to be successful if you're not partnering with those individuals or those departments who are going to have a direct impact on your success and ultimately the organization's success. I was thinking about this as Kasey was speaking, and all of those things, the business development and leadership or learning development doesn't live within my org, but probably one of my best friends, who I consider my brother, has those things over in his area. So we also work very collaboratively together. So I think if you don't have them in that organization, again, that relationship with your coworkers who do have an impact is vital. But I also think too, like I said in the beginning, marketing touches absolutely everything within our organizations. And so they should want to be partnering with you as well, because they know that ultimately your success is their success and vice versa. So I'm a big relationship person on that side to get things done, but that's just my kind of 2 cents on that.
Love it. All right, let's shift to technology. Both of you mentioned technology specifically in your last answers. Talk to us real quickly. Abby, we'll start with you. Kasey, then we'll go to you. What does your relationship look like, either with the technology colleague, the technology leader in your organization, and or the technology function or team within your organization? What does that relationship look like today?
Well, as I just mentioned, it's fantastic right now. It's just totally moving in the right direction. Hasn't always been that way. And I think, traditionally wasn't. I think for us, especially, we really took a transition from being a marketing franchise sales company to being a technology company. We purchased a technology company back in 2018. And it was very obvious that we were trying to become a technology company that worked in the real estate space as opposed to a franchise company that happened to be in the real estate space. So that was a huge change for the company. It didn't fare well for us. We've actually kind of gotten rid of that technology and gone with a partner on it as opposed to building it ourselves. And I think that, depending on what the mindset of what your company is and who you are, if the CTO has a thought that we're a technology company, and the marketing CMO has we're franchise sales. That's how we make money. We make money by selling franchises, by our franchises being profitable. There's always going to be this rift between the two. And so I think that is where, CEOs, the C-suite really needs to come together and really identify clearly for the entire organization, who are we and what. And I think once you identify who you are, what's super important, because I think a lot of times, especially in economies like this, we can be squirrels all over the place, just chasing the thing that we think is going to be quick success. And without a clear vision from the top, doesn't matter. No one's going to be driving in the same direction. And I think that's the key of the first step in building those relationships.
Kasey, what about you? What's your relationship with the technology leader / function / team in your organization look like?
Yeah, so I have a great relationship with our head of technology. I'm working with him on a project right now with our Meet the Team Day. So when we bring prospective franchisees in on how we communicate and tell the story of our tech stack. And he sat down a few weeks ago and he's like, Kasey, we have a lot of technology that I don't think the system is aware of. And I said, absolutely, we do. Traditionally, you look at technology and you think CRM, maybe you think of any sort of, data and analytics, we use Power BI, right? And then, maybe a few other marketing has, we have an email platform, we have some other technology platforms, but you sit down and you say, okay, so what's finance using and what's accounting using? HR and payroll, right? They have a tech stack. And these are traditional platforms that the franchisee internally, the franchisee staff doesn't think about from a technology standpoint, but it's critical for us to tell our story. So whether it's franchise development, whether it's onboarding new franchisees, or whether it's working with existing mature locations to help grow their brand, we have a story that we need to tell. And that story doesn't just live in technology or IT, right? That story lives across the board. And that was one of the reasons why I brought L&D over to marketing is, when we're training our franchisees, when we're training their sales staff, that story needs to be consistent and that story needs to be holistic around the entire brand that Citywide has, not just solely here's what a tool or here's how you input a quote into CRM, right? So having that centralized and having that relationship with our technology team, and I meet with his team on a weekly basis around updates to Power BI and different projects that they're working on. And it's largely driven from a marketing angle of how do we tell our story to our franchisees so we can get them into the systems, leveraging the data. Let's eliminate the phrase, I betcha, and let's lead with, no, we have facts and data that are going to tell our story. So you don't have to betcha on anything. And that's just a powerful tool that we have that we feel is an advantage for us when we're selling franchisees to other concepts, and then how we operate and differentiate ourselves from others in our space.
Yeah, I love the I betcha. One of my favorite quotes I picked up from Google where they said, in God we trust, everyone else bring data. And that's exactly the right way to look at it. I've never heard the I betcha before, but I love that. Great work. Real quick, in literally 10 seconds, for both of you, let's narrow this down and talk specifically about the MarTech, your marketing technology stack. And it's almost hard to do it now because I heard you mention BI and we talked about the intranet, which I wouldn't necessarily consider to be MarTech. MarTech, I would say just those technologies that you use on a daily basis to drive revenue. Who owns that in your organization? Does the marketing team own it and support it? Or does the technology team own it and support it? Abby, why don't you start? Then Kasey, we'll go to you.
We own it. However, our product team does help us support it. So we make the decisions, we set the strategy, just determine whether we're going to do it ourselves or find a partner to do it with. But then ultimately we have a partner on the product team who will support that for us.
Great. Kasey.
Same as Abby, marketing owns it. And then we work with IT to maintain.
All right. Well, we'll shift gears to the next one then. When we talk about owning any kind of stack and it has technology, that means there's a lot of dollars associated with it, which means we're having different conversations with our CFOs and in some cases our board of directors than we've ever had before. It's not about impression share. It's not about return on marketing investment or return on ad spend. It's about making a business case for a 3-year, 5-year agreement for a technology platform that's going to require immense ongoing carrying costs, continued development, likely support people, training for the franchise owners. Talk a little bit about those conversations and how do you have those conversations? What have you done as a marketing leader to make yourself better at having those conversations, which are a little different than we've historically had? Kasey, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so I think this is probably the most difficult part of my role is managing expectations across the system here. So I think, and again, it was same here, same with Great Clips, regardless of the size of the business. How you spend that ad fund is always a contentious topic. For us, what we went back to our system with is in the agreement, right? We always go back to the franchisee agreement, right? The franchisee agreement says that we can spend dollars wherever we want to spend those dollars. If I want to take out a Super Bowl ad, I can. If I want to go jet off to Tahiti, I can. But I'm going to make the best strategic decision for the business. So that has helped eliminate some of the discussion with our franchisees of why are we spending our dollars here? Why do we have fees here? We're paying for it with our ad fund and having some of those discussions. Our CFO has been on board, from the start. He and I started around the same time. So I think coming on in and sitting down with him and talking to him about my strategy and what my strategic initiatives were for the business early on allowed me to have those conversations and it worked well in my favor. But I think it's an ongoing dilemma that we have as marketers to communicate to the system that we are spending their dollars effectively, and it may not on the surface look like a 1-to-1 or a dollar goes out, $2 comes into your budget or comes into your revenue perspective, but setting those expectations around here's what our strategic initiatives are. We're very transparent in that up front. So, we involve our franchisees in our franchise advisory council early on with our mid-year planning and then our strategic planning on here's the initiatives for marketing, here are the initiatives for IT, here are the initiatives for operations. So across the system, there's no question what our North Star is and what we're working towards. And then from a budget perspective, right, it makes that conversation a little bit easier to say, hey, we're allocating X amount of dollars to this initiative and here's why. So I think involving them up front, being transparent with them, but then also taking a step back and say, hey, look, you can say whatever you want to, but ultimately that budget's mine to spend how I want to spend it. You need to trust me, and I'm going to communicate and be open and honest with you along the way. And again, we make our national ad fund. We post that to our intranet on a quarterly basis, so they see where the dollars go and where I'm spending those dollars. So that transparency, I think, is key. But again, that's always been a difficult conversation. Because again, our franchisees, right, they think they're spending more money than they actually are spending. There's always somebody who has a brother or a sister or a cousin who has the latest and greatest that we should probably look at. And there's always going to be franchisees who question, our initiatives, but having that open dialogue up front helps.
Yeah, and you could be number one on every search term possibly related to your business in 4 days if you just hire their brother-in-law. I've got a lot of those brother-in-laws in our system as well. Abby, what about you? Talk about this evolution in your career and your thinking where finance is a little bit different than it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty fortunate just in terms of my relationship with the CFO. And, we've got the CFO and then we've got the brand president and CEO who is really, who I report into, and we really make decisions together. Obviously, we have to get the blessing of finance and things like that. But, I think fortunately for me, I've been around long enough that with the franchisees, at least, we've built trust with them. And so I think if you have that trust factor, and you can always support your decisions with some data, that always helps. And usually what I find is that then they have an aha moment and go, oh my gosh, I never knew that. We've moved, just to give some we've moved very much from a, demo buying method to people-based marketing. And a lot of times our franchisees will come to us and say, I'm not seeing as much advertising as I used to. Well, that's very purposeful. If you are seeing it, probably we're not doing the right thing. So, so that's one conversation that we have with franchisees. The change for us really became when, we're fortunate to have such great awareness. We were able to start taking some of the ad fund dollars, and we don't have like a minimum spend with our franchisees. It's really whatever they want to. So we have it within the marketing fund. We have the national ad fund. We've got the local DMA funds. But we started making a shift to finding and creating marketing tools that we would then be able to deploy to the network, and let our 140,000 brand ambassadors that are our agents help them market, but also help the brand with their additional marketing. And so that's been really successful for us. So I think that's built trust again with the franchisees, but also with our CFO and our finance department. And I find that they certainly want to know where the money goes, but they don't ask a lot of questions. There are questions, but usually it's specific to my what are you doing in my DMA? Like, where are my billboards and things like that. It's really, it's stopped being a large conversation because of that. But I loved what Kasey said about connecting the dots on the last one, connecting the dots and everything. I think that is also so important. That's something we've been talking about. We have fall retreats coming up, and how do we do that with a cross-functional team that can really explain the benefit of the tools, training, and how it all comes together, and really connect all those dots for the franchisees to understand. It may be the marketing fund. It also may be their continuing franchise fee, but how do those things come together? So we're really trying to partner on that as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So we've got about 3 minutes before we're going to go to the breakouts, and I want to do one more, and I'm going to start with you, Abby, because you mentioned that you've shifted a lot of your focus to developing tools so your agents could actually be marketing in their community. So in other words, you're now in the business of training your franchise owners, your agents, to be able to say, how do we market the business? How have you done that? What sort of advice do you have to work with the L&D, learning and development function in your business to make that successful?
Yeah, well, we're fortunate. We've got a great training department, and they're out in the field all the time. And, they really train on the entire tech stack as a company, not just the marketing tech stack. But I'll go back to what we're talking about doing for our broker meetings, is really asking our regional operations team, okay, what are you hearing from the field, from your owners? What are they having challenges with as it relates to marketing? Are they having challenges with content? Are they having challenges with deployment of campaigns? How is that work? How is that challenge? And then what we're thinking about doing is having that cross-functional team who really takes that challenge and breaks it down for them. Step by step, live driving. Here's the tool that we would recommend you use. Here's some of the content, and really take them step by step of, here's where you find the content. Here's how you add the content into this marketing channel. Here's how you deploy it. We really are, have tried to create so much content for them in our minds to make it so simplistic for them. What we've kind of done is made it more complicated, because there's so much out there that they don't know what's going to be most beneficial. And that's when it then goes back to the analytics and the data, and teaching them how to break down their investments in marketing and see what's been most beneficial for them. But really, truly, like, we're going through and really hand holding them on, here's how to, for them, it's going to be more about recruiting agents, retaining agents. But we're hoping by doing this, they'll be able to take it down to the agent level and train them on these tools, how to then get to the consumer ultimately.
Yeah. Good stuff. Kasey, anything to add there, and how you teach and train?
Yeah, this is an interesting thing for us, because we have such a wide span of revenue. We have locations that are just starting out, and they're going to do about 100,000 a year, and then our top locations are, doing 40, 50 million in revenue. So, what we've developed is some playbooks for our locations saying, okay, years 1 through 3, this is really what you should be focusing on from a marketing perspective. A lot of those efforts are going to be handled by my team for you. So you can focus on sales, you can focus on hiring and servicing your accounts. Once you hit, a certain revenue milestone, then you should probably start looking at investing additional dollars outside of, what we're doing from a system perspective in different channels. And then that top tier, hey, you should probably start looking at other agencies and outside vendors that we can work with and help provide them the resources and the tools. But my team just simply doesn't have the bandwidth to manage those executions for you. So here's what we would recommend focusing on. And what we did from a process improvement, each of my departments, they have a process improvement plan that they do each year. And from an L&D perspective, we took a look at sales and training completion. We're not a compliance-based organization. If you want to take the training, great. If you don't want to take it, that's up to you. But what we found on that, and again, it's no surprise, but sometimes it just, takes the franchisee seeing the data is, sales executives that took the training within the first 6 months, they were closer to hitting their sales quota at the end of the year. And the turnover for those positions were a lot lower than the sales folks who did not complete the training, right? So you take that and then provide them the resources, but then also setting milestones of, hey, look, you're new to the business. You're in a different spot than a franchisee who's been around for 20 years. We shouldn't be prescribing the same medication to you that we are to them. And how do we start helping them and then empowering them to go out and say, hey, we're here for support, but you're at a point now where we can't physically support you. And here are the tools and resources that you should be using to leverage outside third-party vendors that we approve.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you both. And for the folks that are on, we're going to go into breakout rooms, but we're going to circle back and get some final thoughts from both Abby as well as Kasey. So they're not done yet. But the next step, I think I'm going to turn it over to Danielle. We're going to go into breakout rooms. I believe that Abby will be in one, I will be in one, Kasey will be in one, and I think Danielle will be in one. And we've got about 10 minutes of rapid fire feedback based on everything you heard. What do you think the biggest priority should be for us coming out of this session? And then we'll come back and share that with the group as a whole. And then we'll share our parting comments from Kasey and Abby, and then take any questions that we have time to get to. So I would say there were a couple things, and I won't necessarily limit it to our breakout room. I would look at the whole thing. My takeaways, number one, is the emphasis on the marketing leaders becoming even more business savvy. It used to be, I think we were really respected for our ability to drive revenue and our ability to grow brands, but it's just going to be imperative in the coming years for us to understand how to build relationships and the realities of all the different components of an organization. And I think Abby spoke to that there's probably a new title somewhere along the road to represent that. A second thing is the collaboration, which is sort of tied to that. It used to be that if you were a rock star marketer, you could go out and be successful and keep a job for a long time and become very wealthy. I'm not so sure the future is like that anymore, because I don't think you can be a rock star marketer without collaboration within internal audiences and external audiences. And then one of my big ahas that really I took away from in the discussion, and I'll leave this with everybody just to think through on your own, but are we seeing the end of a hierarchical organization in the business world? Because in all four of the topics that we addressed in the panel, they all in some form or another talked about a business objective that had groups of people focused on the objective with no real decision-making responsibility. And in a hierarchical organization, it used to be who owns this and who owns that. But in this world where it's all becoming muddled, are we seeing the beginning of the end of hierarchical organizations? And the successful CFO of the future, or CMO of the future, will be the CMO who understands how to work in this non-hierarchical, but rather circular organization, rallying around the most important business objectives. That would be my big one for everybody to take away and really think through is, Is that where organizations are headed? And is that going to be the key to being a successful CMO or whatever the title may be in the future?